You're listening to the Career Jump podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew McCaskill.
Hello and welcome to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge, Andrew McCaskill, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Duncan Strachan. Thank you very much for joining us, Duncan.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks very much for inviting me. Yeah, Duncan Strachan, pay-as-you-go marketing consultant. Yeah.
Lovely to have you. And I noticed before we started the call that we've got 568 shared connections on LinkedIn. So a well overdue conversation. And it's nice to take our online relationship offline as well. So good to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, being a job seeker and moving into consultancy in the last 11 months, one of the things that's really added a lot of value for me is having these kind of Zoom calls with people. And I think it really does help to deepen relationships. I think there's kind of two sides to the argument in terms of Zoom. Is it, cheaper than or not as meaningful as a face-to-face conversation? But I think personally, when so many of us have been starved of human interaction, having a Zoom call has been absolutely fantastic. And you get a window into people's worlds really quickly. And I think where it's worked really well for me is just having repeated calls with people as well. It's not a one and done. When you build a rapport with someone, it just deepens that relationship, and you want to have deeper conversations and really support them on their journey.
Well, certainly happy to take this forward with some more calls as well, by way of follow-up, to make sure it's not a one and done situation. Just to give us some more context before we dive in to rack your brains on everything from LinkedIn to personal branding and pay-as-you-go and everything else. Tell us a little bit about your own journey from a career perspective and where you're up to today. Yeah,
sure. So I've got 18 years marketing experience, and I think my career's kind of gone through kind of three kind of disparate stages. I had 12 years kind of permanent experience, and the key part of my permanent career was working for a company, HomeServe, home emergency insurance company. They're based in Walsall. I live in North Birmingham, and I was there for 4.5 years working in their retention team. Wrote a suite of renewal documents for them that generated a 4.15% uplift that was worth £1 million. So real proof points of my kind of copywriting prowess. So had the kind of permanent stints. Then I kind of fell into contracting, and I was a marketing contractor for 6 years, and that gave me wonderful exposure. Worked for Barclays a couple of times, Jaguar Land Rover, Npower, and I've worked at the SME end. There's a bank called Unity Trust Bank, which is a commercial bank with a social conscience based in Birmingham, that I was lucky enough to be invited back to there as well. And most recently, I worked in the pharmaceutical sector for McKesson. So the contract period was really great in terms of giving me exposure to big brands, but also, you're being tested the whole time. The whole point of kind of ethos of a contractor is the ability to be able to go in, make an immediate impact, hit the ground running. And to be a marketer that gets consistent kind of contract employment in the Midlands, you have to be able to wear quite a few different hats and have quite a few strings to your bow. So my last contract, which was with McKesson, that was internal communications focused, but the previous one at Unity Trust Bank, you're working as part of a marketing team of 6, and they're saying, we want to raise the profile of the brand and we don't have a PR agency in place. So I'm writing the press releases myself, picking up the phone, speaking to all the media outlets, securing the coverage. I launched Facebook and Instagram for them, so doing stuff on social media as well. So there's a real kind of breadth of experience. And then you work at Barclays or Jaguar Land Rover, you're part of big virtual teams, and the role becomes more kind of quasi project management. And I'm a Prince 2 practitioner, project manager as well, which is something that recruiters have told me to kind of put to the side at the moment, because we've all got to focus on our niche and what our kind of core strengths are. But then the last part of the journey is really where I am now. In terms of November time, I launched my own consultancy business, and that was a result of me being very active on LinkedIn. So, from last year, March 2020, I've posted really regularly on the platform. I think I'm just over the 130 post mark now, and some businesses approached me as a result of the activity that I was doing, saying, would you be interested in doing some short-term consultancy work? And I thought, yeah, absolutely, jump at the chance. And, from that, this kind of pay-as-you-go marketing proposition formed. And it seems to be in the sweet spot for businesses of a certain size, certainly with all the uncertainty that's going on right now.
Yeah, no, very much so. And that breadth that you've got, Prince 2, comms, PR, marketing strategy, really appeals to SMEs, doesn't it? Because they want somebody who can...
Absolutely. I mean, the whole point of the pay-as-you-go proposition is it's no contract, it's no retainer. You only pay for what you receive or what you need. And I think with SMEs, they don't want, or they can't necessarily afford someone for 12 months right now. But if they could get someone for 3 weeks, that's got the requisite skill set and experience and can bring the kind of benefit of that big brand rigor, test and learn approach, to bear for a smaller SME, I think that is really valuable right now. It's everybody wants more bang for their buck, and I'm certainly hoping to provide it with the pay-as-you-go marketing service.
No, it's been really interesting. We've seen a few clients in Executive Career Jump and also just in the LinkedIn ecosystem go with this on-demand type approach.
I think it's the way the world's going. I really do. I mean, I think, we look at careers and kind of job certainty, that the days of a job for life are probably long behind us. And I think as the world becomes kind of more transactional and fragmented, I think people will use people that have got that skill set on a kind of short-term burn. And, for me, that's certainly something I'm comfortable with. I think the challenge is obviously just getting started. And I think, I built really great momentum in November, December, got some good clients and it was all going. But when we're flitting between kind of lockdown and non-lockdown, I think that does kind of slow the momentum slightly. But hopefully, just keeping doing what I'm doing and the approach that generated that initial contact from clients, I think if you can maintain consistent in your voice and what you post about and what people engage in, then hopefully that will drive more interest.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. So a lot of our listeners are job seekers, leaders in transition, people who are looking to attract in a new employer, and everybody's telling them to use LinkedIn. Now, we're both big users of the platform and spend a lot of time there. And you mentioned earlier that you've, over 100 posts and you've been really consistent with it. I'm wondering what kind of learnings and advice you would give off the back of your experience so far.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I would say to anyone on LinkedIn is track the performance of your posts. I mean, that is the key thing for me. As a marketer, test and learn background, that's absolutely the first thing to do. There's a lot of people that say, obviously LinkedIn, it's just, you're putting seeds in the wind, some land, some don't. I don't really believe that. I think there are techniques and content topics and formatting tactics that you can use that will drive, kind of higher engagement. Obviously, I think everything in the end comes down to the value of the content that you're putting out there. And you do have to think in terms of the value to your network. As much as you all want to target, an end user, an employer or your next career move, I think it's always the big question, are those people looking? And then ultimately, how do you make yourself visible enough to be seen by that audience? And I think that's where my approach may differ from other people, because I think I see a lot of people pushing the kind of get found, get hired model, which is just saying post consistently around your niche, demonstrate the value that you add. And by doing so, you'll in the end, inevitably by a war of attrition, find your target employer who will hire you. And that is probably a perfectly good way of using LinkedIn. But I think the thing that I do that maybe sets me apart is that I think much more in terms of the value that I can add for my network, because I think that power of advocacy. And, if we're talking about kind of personal brands as a marketer, your brand advocates, your biggest brand advocates are going to be the people in your network that you're dealing with day to day. And it's what's going to encourage them to go out of their way to try and help you to find your next opportunity. Is it going to be about you just posting relentlessly about your skill set and how brilliant you are? Or is it about posting about shared experiences and ways that you can add value for other people? And I think we have a tendency with LinkedIn to become a bit one-dimensional. We focus purely on what we vocationally do. But what we know is we all work on 3 levels. So, there's what we vocationally do, but we're also fellow professionals and we're human beings. And I think we can serve each of those facets of our personality through what we post and how we interact with people on LinkedIn. Sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think the kind of key thing as well is it's not just about posting. I think that's the big misconception. I started out on LinkedIn. If you look at my activity kind of pre-March 2020 to now, I started out on LinkedIn, probably very similar to a lot of people. All of my posts were very self-serving. It was just talking about my own achievements and, promoting whatever business I was working for at the time. I never really commented on anybody else's posts. And, hand on heart, I probably looked back down on people who did. For me, it all felt a bit kind of desperate and needy and attention seeking. But thankfully, through this experience of the last 11 months, all of those preconceptions have been proven to be completely false. And, my biggest realization about LinkedIn is that it's not just a broadcast platform. It is a community and a social network. I mean, you talk about an ecosystem, and I think you've got to be there for other people consistently. And I think if you do that, then that's where the reciprocity comes from. So while I'm also a big advocate of posting regularly, and I think that's absolutely vital, it's who are you commenting on? Whose posts are you commenting on? Who are you trying to support in? I can see when someone puts what you would deem a flair post out, it's a no-brainer for me to comment on that because I can see the intent behind why they're doing it. But also, I think, you see posts where people are open to work, will say, I'm looking for work, and I'll put a comment on there. But it won't just be a kind of throwaway sharing for my network. It will be, I'll take a bit of time to look at the post and say, what is the specific job title that person's asking for? And put all of that in my comment. I don't know algorithmically whether it makes a difference, but I think people know when you are going over and above to try and help someone else. And sometimes I'll say, look, if you're reading this comment, please add a comment as well to try and help this person. And I've had scenarios where I've been the first person to do that on a post on a weekend. And then, I'll see in a couple of hours that there's, 48 people will have added a comment, and a lot of them will be people that are in my network. So it does make a difference, but you have to have the mindset of saying, I am going to do this, and not be afraid about perception of people in your network, sneering at you, going, oh, what's he doing, helping job seekers or everything else. You've got to just get rid of that kind of thinking and just think, I'm here to help. And I think the more you can do that and look beyond yourself to help other people, certainly in my experience, that's how I've got a lot out of the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe in the ecosystem word. I use that word way too much, and my clients kind of take the mickey out of me sometimes about it, the amount of times the word ecosystem comes out of my mouth. But what I mean by that,
it's true. I mean, I think there's no better way of doing it. I mean, I say the virtuous circle, whatever you want to call it, but the reality is, it is that key principle that it's a community first. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people, kind of miss out on. They think, I'm going to come on here and share my proposition with people, and people are going to love it. If I sell, there'll be someone to buy. But I think it's much more about, how are you adding value for people? What are you known for beyond your vocation? Are you known as a person that wants to help other people on the platform? Are you sharing advice freely? And I think that's the other key thing. I probably went into LinkedIn thinking, I don't want to give away my trade secrets. I'm a marketer, the value in what I do, as with you as a career coach with your job hack sessions on a Thursday, should I give away all of my kind of knowledge and experience for free? And the answer actually on balance is yes, you absolutely should, because nobody is going to want to learn how to do your job through a LinkedIn post. They just want to know that you're competent enough to do the job, and sharing a bit of your knowledge and experience will give them the confidence that they can hire you to do the job.
Yeah, I always advised against going out and sharing all of our playbooks and all of our advice on that by a number of people who generally cared about us, but I'm glad we ignored it. And
well, I think your follower growth proves that probably wasn't the right strategy.
No, correct. And also, I mean, knowledge is nowhere near as that whole scarcity mindset doesn't really have a place in the current ecosystem. Knowledge is nowhere near as valuable now as it would have been 10 years ago, because anyone can go on YouTube and find out how to write a CV. Anyone can go into Facebook and type interview tips and find out how to interview better, right? So
absolutely. I think that comes back to the kind of personal branding piece. And where is your big differentiator? There's a lot of people that offer pay-as-you-go marketing services. I've been on Google, I know about it. There's a lot of career coaches out there. So it's, what do you stand for as a person, that sets you apart? And I think, maybe in the early days of me on LinkedIn, the big differentiator was I was offering the kind of advice that you would be offering, but I'm not a career coach, so I don't have any kind of skin in the game in terms of the stuff that I'm doing. It's a pure kind of reciprocity piece. And for me, it's just, I kind of fell into this market. My contract came to a premature end because of COVID, and all of the usual stuff that I would have done on LinkedIn in terms of promoting myself and my skills and experience didn't bear any fruit. There were no takers. And I just thought, wow, this is tough. This market is exceptional. And, my initial instinct there was, well, if I'm struggling with the brands that I've got on my CV, other people are going to be really struggling. So, what can I do to try and help other people? And I thought I was well qualified to do that, in the sense that I've been a marketing contractor for 6 years. I've been to a heck of a lot of interviews, so I'd learned some tips along the way. And I think it was just that sharing of that kind of stuff. That's what kind of started the whole ball rolling, for me. And I think from there, it became, learning more about LinkedIn and the platform and measuring what you do. And through that, I was able to kind of shine a little light on what was working for me that I could share with other people. And I think it's all of that kind of stuff. It's finding topics that have kind of universal appeal as well, because I think there's always a danger that we become a bit of an echo chamber. So, you've got a big audience, and, they're all, kind of job seekers, and everyone will connect with each other and support each other's posts. And that's absolutely great. But what are the topics out there that would transcend a job seeker status? And for me, LinkedIn is something that everybody would want to know about. And I've certainly found that in terms of my strategy for connecting with new people is I share a 22-page guide, for driving engagement on LinkedIn. And Obviously, there's a percentage of people that don't look at it at all, but those that do and see the value in it and the fact that I'm giving it to them for free, that builds a real instant kind of rapport and reciprocity, which has hopefully, touch wood, generated some, traction on my posts.
Yeah. Well, the more you help people get what they want, the more you'll get what you want anyway. It's always been
Completely agree.
Reciprocity. So that's the irony of the approach that some are taking. So you obviously had an advantage, some would say, without question, of being a well-qualified and talented copywriter and a marketeer. What would you have in terms of some basic advice for people who are about to start their posting journey on LinkedIn who don't have your marketing credentials?
I think the kind of key things for me are, less is definitely more. I think, from all the kind of research that I've done around the platform, I did a poll last year saying, how do people access LinkedIn? And I think 66% said it was via mobile phones. And I think that's absolutely crucial, because so much of the content, I read it and you see these kind of carousel posts and everything, and I'm squinting, I can't read the text and everything else. So gear everything that you do for a mobile mindset. That would be the kind of rule one. And I know you follow this approach as well with the format of your posts, but keep things as short and sweet as possible. And when you're laying out a post, text posts work better than anything else in terms of wider engagement and traction. So if I'm writing a text post, I have a short, punchy, capitalized headline, and I've analyzed the performance of all my posts, and my top 10 performers have got an average of 3.5 words, so less is definitely more there. But you want short sentences, lots of white space around them. Just make it digestible. I mean, there's nothing more of a turn off for me than when I'm looking at a post and it's 3 big block paragraphs. I just haven't got the time to read it, and that's the big challenge. I mean, every other format as well, you can look at it with the same kind of mindset and through the same lens. Doing videos, so I had a rule that said, well, your video shouldn't be longer than 2 minutes. Well, I've put a video out today, it's 2 minutes 16, it's not doing particularly well. That's probably why. It's those kind of things. You always have to think, time is short, attention spans are short, people want to help you, but you have to make sure that it's snackable and digestible. I think that's the kind of key thing for me. I design a lot of my kind of document posts on Canva, and I've got some rules of thumb with that I don't. Well, there's a LinkedIn post format, which is 1200 by 1200 pixels, which you can select on the drop down. That is the one to go for on mobile. It's really punchy, really high impact. I think it looks a bit weird on desktop, but more people are using mobile. But then if I'm producing, one of those carousel posts, it's just really basic things like I don't go much below font size 40, because it's easy to read kind of and scannable. So it's there's 2 schools of thought on all of it. I try and make my posts as user friendly as possible. If I'm doing a video, I always include subtitles. I think that can hurt your engagement, because there are people that can hover over your post, watch the whole thing and never have to physically click in the post. I've seen other people that obviously do videos without subtitles, but the risk you run with that is that it's a bit of a false promise. If you click on the video and you go, well, that was a waste of my time, will you come back and watch the next one? So I think it's all of that kind of stuff that really gears into it. But consistency is obviously key as well. I think you've just got to keep posting. At peak, I was doing probably 5 posts a week. I'm probably down to more like 3, just because of, coming up with the ideas that I think will add value. It does become more challenging, but those are the big things. And the last thing that I've realized as well is there was a worry about repeating yourself. That was always seen as a big fear for me. Oh, I did a post 6 months ago, which was about this topic. I can never talk about it again. But I think the reality is, I produced this 22-page guide and I posted that in November. And I thought, well, this is really all I've got to say about LinkedIn engagement. There's going to be very little else that I can talk about. But this year, I've kind of chunked down that information and started playing it out in video. And I've not seen a drop off. I think there's people that come to you that have been connections with me for a long time and saying, oh, it's great advice, Duncan. I'm like, well, I gave you this guide in November that told you all of that already. But I think people don't remember anything. I think that's the key thing. It's people's, we're all in a kind of short-term memory space. There's just so much information out there that I think you're perfectly legitimate in repeating, kind of key messages, as long as they're valuable and they help people. Yeah.
Not only is it legitimate, you should do it, because that consistency builds trust with your audience, the consistency of message. I think everybody has a blocker that they need to come up with something amazingly original that's never been said before that would impress, the brightest people in their industry. You don't have to. If you're coming up with stuff that is serving other people and you're consistent with your pillars of what you're posting on, you'll tend to serve yourself absolutely fine.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say, and I've looked at this recently, is probably don't look to big influencers like yourself as a yardstick of what to post. because I think there's a different rule for someone who's got a huge following. I don't know entirely how the algorithm works and whether it's all changing, but for me, it always seemed to be, if you got 20 likes in the first hour, that was the kind of platform to wider reach. Now, It's going to be a lot easier for you to get that with a following of 70,000 than, me with my following of less than 5. And I think we look at big influencer posts, and I see a lot of these kind of listicle posts, which are like really lightweight. I mean, they'll say, how to make the most of LinkedIn, post a lot, or, comment on other people's posts. But there's so little kind of meat in what they're saying, but they get 200 to 300 likes. So you go, oh, well, that must be what the audience is demanding. But if you look at that engagement as a proportion of their total follower count, it's actually really low. And it's a lot lower than the engagement I was getting with, my kind of sub 5,000 followers. So I think when you're kind of trying to build an audience to build traction, I wouldn't look at big influencers and say, I'll just copy their kind of really lightweight, kind of low detail model and expect to get the same traction. I've seen people try it and it really does generate very little traction. I think it's much more about offering your kind of authentic self, sharing more of personal experience and helping people to kind of get to know you and what you're really interested in, rather than just pulling 5 things which you could probably have got out of a marketing textbook or, whatever business journal people will be looking at.
No, it's absolutely right. The authenticity is the important. You shouldn't look to emulate anybody. Learn from what's going on in there, but do you, I think, is absolutely the
absolutely,
right.
yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.execcareerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
And the length is really interesting. You mentioned, videos under 2 minutes. We're seeing, not just in LinkedIn, but across all social platforms, the length of content getting shorter. When you look at YouTube, the amount of sub 1 minute videos that have been uploaded to YouTube in the last 6 months is more than at any other point in the history of the channel.
Yeah.
So everything's kind of getting shorter. I'm also seeing people doing Twitter style length posts on LinkedIn. So doing
and I think anything can kind of catch fire, but I always look at them and kind of say, what's your kind of like to comment ratio? Because I think there's a lot of people that will get these posts that generate a huge amount of likes. And I don't know whether it makes a massive difference in terms of reach, but you'll get thousands of likes, but very few comments. And I've always felt that if your kind of likes to comments ratio is closer, that is more meaningful kind of content that would hopefully go wider. I've got no evidence to back that up, but I always see, you'll get, picture posts of, someone in a kitchen with a baby in a harness on a laptop, and 2,000 people have liked it, but very few people will have commented. And I think it's knowing how the scales really balance on that. I mean, I've been fortunate in a way that I've always had a lot of comments, in proportion to, the number of likes that I've had. But I don't know if the scales were different, whether that would make a massive difference. I mean, maybe you've got some experience of that.
Yeah. So the hierarchy is shares. If you write something that people share on, that disproportionately pushes that post on the platform. So shares is number one. The more times your post is shared, disproportionately, the more you'll be able to see.
That's interesting. That is interesting, because from what I've read, they always said comments trumps everything else. So, but whether that's true or not, I mean, I've had posts that have been shared a lot, and I'm sure invariably they are, some of my most seen posts. So I'm sure it certainly helps. But I think it probably depends what you're sharing as well, because if you share a video, it's brilliant. You have to see the video in the post. But if you share a text post, it's the law of diminishing returns, isn't it? Because they see less of the post when it's shared. You'll only see like the first line or whatever, and they've got less to get kind of stuck into. So I think in the process of sharing, absolutely probably is the right thing to do from an algorithmic point of view. But I've always felt that comments was where the real kind of traction came from.
Yeah, it's not so much that when they share it on that people can see it. It's what that action,
the value,
that says, because what they're constantly doing with your post is they're adding a value to it based on the engagement that it's getting. This is why people do all this silly stuff with engagement pods and all this silliness, right? Where they're all going on and charging in and liking each other's stuff, which, a lot of them, you'll see thousands of likes and no comments for that reason. So
exactly.
if it's a true organic thing, so I've managed to avoid joining engagement pods, and I don't plan on doing so anytime soon. But if it's a true organic thing, shares that in the eyes of LinkedIn, the amount of credit it gives that post for somebody feeling compelled that they identify with it so much they feel like they should be sharing it on.
Valued content.
Yeah, exactly. So I always try and write one post a week that'll compel people to share it on. They'll identify with it so much. It's like I'm championing their voice to the point they'll feel like I have to share this. Because this,
and I think that's massively, important. I think that's that kind of emotional resonance. And I know you do these posts, and they're very good in terms of, directing towards employers, saying, we've got to change our ways here.
Call it out.
And I think, but the value in that is that you're saying to your community, well, I support the cause that you want to support. And I think that's, it's that kind of piece of being kind of a like voice, and kind of shared purpose, which has, real resonance. I mean, the posts that I've done that have kind of gone into that space has all been about getting people in wider networks to support job seeker content. So, my most successful posts have been about things like the green banner, which we won't talk about, but in terms of just, wider kind of issues affecting job seekers, and the fact that it's not a spectator sport, we all need to engage, and a comment on a post can make a massive difference to how widely a job seeker post has been seen. And I think, that is a message that I've done several times, and I would continue to do so, because, in terms of my purpose, I feel, I started in the job seeker community. I still am, a quasi member of it in terms of looking for consultancy clients, but I'm a big, kind of champion, having been through this exceptional market. It's something I'm really passionate about, that, we have to try and get people off the sidelines on LinkedIn to help people. And the point I always try and stress in my posts is that LinkedIn makes it so easy to help people. It's a couple of seconds of your time could make a massive difference to someone else, could get them a job, and where could you spend a couple of seconds of your time more effectively in the day? Absolutely.
So really, really good points. So just to finish the hierarchy off, so it's shares is the biggest, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. Comments is by far the next biggest. Reactions third, likes fourth. So a simple like, which can be done just clicking through, has the lowest impact. So comments are huge, which is why both of us are always trying to reply to as many comments as we can as well, to
I think that's massive. I think that's massive, and I always see that with people, and I just think it's such a missed opportunity. I mean, I had a couple of people speak to me in the last week saying, "Oh, something happened to the algorithm. I'm not getting the amount of views that I used to get. And it's dramatically, kind of reduced." And I see people when they do these posts that kind of go big, and this is for people, more at my level than yours. But when you get a post, it gets a lot of traction, and you're just leaving the comments out there, and it's just like, well, what does that say to the other person? It's basically saying, "Thanks for commenting, but I have no interest in what you have to say at all." And that's not really how communities are built. Communities are built by responding to every comment. And even if people come on, and it happens thankfully really infrequently on LinkedIn, but you get people on, and the first thing they do is just try and tear down your point of view. That's it. That's their approach. Just like, oh, hope is not a strategy. That's one I had. I put a post out about hope, and they're like, hope is not a strategy. And I'm like, okay, that's absolutely fine. And I'll always respond to these people and say, look, I completely understand your point of view. I wasn't framing it as a strategy. I was saying, X, Y, Z. But you always want to end. I try and end on good terms. Whatever conversation that I'm having. Because there's a power in just them showing up and making a comment, whatever they're saying. If I respond to it, it's going to have more of an algorithmic benefit for me than just leaving them, in the dust. So it's all about that engagement, really.
Yeah, well, life would be boring if we agreed on everything, wouldn't it? So
absolutely. But I think that what kind of sets LinkedIn apart in the main is that there is an ability to have a kind of reasoned debate on something in a way that doesn't go, for the throat, doesn't get personal, and I think that's really where LinkedIn does seem to be a little bit more refined, which I certainly appreciate. And it would be boring if we all thought the same thing, but I think, I'm always keen to open a conversation. I think that makes such a big difference. My first comment on my own post is always a couple of questions, just saying, please let me know in the comments, and starting that. And I think that shows, you don't have all the answers. It demonstrates humility, but also you want your posts to be a welcoming place where people feel like, it's a good place to discuss topics. And, these kind of things make a real difference. I'm not a big fan of the, agree ? Closer on posts, because for me, it just feels a little bit off. A little bit kind of offhand for me. I try and do things in hopefully a bit more of a kind of genteel way.
Yeah, I'll try and finish on a question if I can, but if not, then I'll just start the first comment with a question. Either way, you've got to encourage people to engage and make it okay for them to do so. And
yeah, exactly. None of us have all the answers, and I think that's the brilliant thing. And for me, in terms of, just coming back to getting the most out of LinkedIn, I found those comment sections have sparked so many ideas for posts. Totally. You do a response on someone else's post or on your own post, and you think, wow, there's a post in this. And that just helps to drive it. So when people are saying, oh, I'm struggling, I don't have any ideas for posts, go on and comment on some other people's posts, and that will spark an idea for you. And there are no new ideas. We're all talking around similar topics. I'm sure we've seen a million posts on resilience, but it's that kind of spin that you can put on it based on your own experience or conversations that you've had that really brings it to life.
Top tip, top tip that. Talk to me a bit more about your experience shooting and distributing your own video then. How's that been, and what advice would you have for people about to go that route? The algorithm's liking video again, from what I'm being told.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I did go a bit kind of upmarket. My biggest kind of concession, I'll actually show you, is I got a Sony ZV-1 camera, which is it's supposed to be a blogging camera. Not that I know a lot about blogging, but I just thought all the stuff that I was doing on LinkedIn. The wonderful thing about the world at the moment is there's sites like Canva that really democratize kind of graphic design. I can go on there with very limited skills and say, if I've got a couple of decent photos of myself, or I look relatively professional, and I use my marketing skills to kind of show a bit of moderation in only using a couple of fonts or everything else, you can produce stuff that looks pretty good. So I thought, well, I used to do videos in my early days. If we went back 9 months, I was sitting here with my iPad, and producing these things. And I think there was a quality differential there. So, the biggest kind of things that I bought a ring light, which I'm using now, which I'm not ashamed of. I think these things do matter. And if you're on a video interview, having good lighting and putting your best foot forward, both visually and, in terms of what you're saying, is massively important. So I think, those concessions, it's just about making sure that whatever you use can give you a suitably quality output, and don't put your first take up on as your final video. I think that's the kind of key thing as well. I mean, I use a bit of software called Camtasia from TechSmith, which you can buy. It's a one-off license, costs about £200 or just over. And I'd used that in a previous job. And I think the beauty of that is it really opens doors for you, because you're not only can I share my own kind of, face to camera views, but I can do screen recording off the back of it as well. So if I'm talking about other people, I did a post today about a woman called Ayu in Malaysia, who's grown her following this year from a single follower to over 17,000 by looking beyond herself to try and help other graduates. And I was able to, do a screen grab of her kind of profile and the video that she was on over the weekend, the LinkedIn Live that I saw. And I think it all helps to kind of bring things to life. And I think that's where you can kind of move from being just purely trying to share your own advice, which, there is a limited amount of, to becoming more of a curator of other people's content and saying, hey, this is something that I found interesting, which fits with my kind of worldview and narrative. It might be interesting to you too. And I think, when we've got that kind of following or traction, whatever my kind of following is, I think we have got a responsibility to kind of send the ladder back down, and try and help other people out. And, that's always what I'm trying to do. But I think if we can all, the more we can all connect and, join forces in terms of, sharing the spotlight on other people, I think we've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. It certainly benefits you. I mean, you've got such a kind of ardent support base in terms of your, executive career jump club, and they will be going out to people that are saying they're open to work, saying, well, have you been to Andrew's Thursday session? And, all of this kind of stuff. And it comes back to that point that, the people in your network are your biggest advocates. They will build your personal brand a lot more than anything that you or I could do, in a video or otherwise. That's where the brand really lives and breathes. It's not going to be just in what, you say that you are. It's what people believe that you are based on their experience with you.
And the action that you take. Because people...
Absolutely, it all works. It all feeds in. And if you're doing things that are out of kilter with that, then you will pay the price. I mean, I think that's the other thing as well. A personal brand is never set in stone. It's constantly evolving. And for me, my big watchword with LinkedIn is everything counts. Every comment, every DM, every post, it all has a weight. And I think if you step off any particular part of the LinkedIn kind of process, you will suffer for it, because it only takes one to have not a fantastic experience with you. So it's a challenging one.
Yeah. Well, if we had more time, I'd go down the rabbit holes of talking to you about Piers Morgan, the royal family, and everything else at the moment.
Oh, please don't get into politics and religion. But I mean, my view on that, just my 2 pence worth, is if someone's brave enough to admit that they were feeling suicidal, I think, we should all lead with compassion first. And, I mean, I always find Facebook a really scary place to go, because you just see the comments that people put on and you just wonder where is our humanity going? And I think that's a big problem with, kind of social media more generally. Thankfully, I see LinkedIn as the kind of last bastion of how people should engage on, social media with a degree of kind of respect and, like I say, reasoned conversation rather than just getting into kind of flame wars with people. But yeah, I just think, empathy first. We've all got a story, and I think that's a key thing for everyone. This job market has been so exceptional and so draining for so many people, and I know people that are part of your, kind of club that have been on the market the whole time, and I've had sporadic bits of work along the way, but it's not been easy, and it's not easy for anyone. And I think hats off to everybody who comes on and, shows up on LinkedIn and contributes and posts, every week, knowing how tough this has been. And I think, if anyone's watching this or listening to this, it's just knowing that, you can all help people on LinkedIn by doing the smallest of things. And, adding a comment to their post is such a massive gesture.
Tremendous message. And I think my favorite event so far on LinkedIn this year was a guy called Stuart Masson, who did a post about the fact that he's on the borderline of being evicted and his young family were going to be evicted.
Yeah, I saw that. What happened there? Did he get a job? Did that bear fruit?
He's still in the mix. He's still in the mix for a few things. He will get hired. And ultimately, the compassion and empathy that the LinkedIn ecosystem showed to that post, for some reason, that post, he was brave enough to stick his hand up and ask for help. Yeah. And the guy had 1 million hits.
That's amazing. That is amazing. But I think that's the last thing for me, is just don't be afraid to ask for help on LinkedIn. I think we all see this as a sign of weakness. It's absolutely not. I mean, if I do posts promoting my own consultancy business, I always say on them, if you could add a comment to help me get seen by the right people, that's that. And I think that's absolutely legitimate. I don't do it on every post, but I would do it on the ones that I think are really important to me and that, I'm hoping to get some kind of, response off. So it's, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think the community, and I'm sure you'll attest to this as well, has changed 100% from, what I saw on LinkedIn kind of pre-March. I think so many people have been through this experience and have come out the other side and thought, attitudes to LinkedIn have to change. We have to approach it differently, and it is a community. It's not a broadcast platform to just say, hey, where I'm working is great, or this is the latest certificate I've got. There's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more that we could do to actively help people right now.
Yes, very, very well said. And let's make sure we maintain that ethos once the pandemic is finished and that we return to whatever comes next, because I think, it's brought out the best and the worst in people at times, but the best in LinkedIn has been so clear to see. And I really hope everybody maintains that. And yeah, thank you on behalf of the job seekers who listen to this for everything you've been doing to try and prop people up during this period. It's been really noticeable, which was why I was so keen to talk to you and have you on. For anybody that wants to reach out, whether they're looking to network or see some more of your content, or maybe they're looking to engage with an on-demand marketing director, how should they contact you, Duncan? What's the best bet?
Yeah, I mean, on LinkedIn, Duncan Strachan, if you do a search for, pay-as-you-go marketing communications consultant, you should find me. Always happy to connect or be followed by new people or follow new people. But my website is Pay-as-you-go marketing. It's PAYG marketing.co.uk. So if people want to have a look on my my website and check out some of my key career successes and see that I can do what I say I can do, then that would be absolutely great. But yeah, LinkedIn or the website PAYG marketing.co.uk would be great.
Excellent. Well, all the best with the business and the on-demand work that you're doing. And thanks again for all the time that you're spending on LinkedIn and the time you spent with us today. It's been great to talk to you. Cheers.
Brilliant, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew McCaskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.